Good afternoon. Welcome back to our study. This is day 3 of our study. We're just getting into verse 8. So we're going to pick up a little bit of speed as we move through here. But we are in Ephesians chapter 5 if you want to join us and if you want to be part of our study. We have talked about a lot of things so far that Paul is encouraging them to be and to do as New Testament Christians, as people that have had their sins washed away and are now walking in the light. And now in verse 7, he tells them, therefore do not be partners with them, talking about sexually immoral, talking about impure people, talking about people who are idolaters or covetous people. He says, don't partake of that. And here's the reminder, verse 8. For at one time you were in darkness. We mentioned this in chapter 2, just as when we went back and just a quick review of chapter 2. They were once dead in their trespasses and sins, excuse me, but they have been made alive together with Christ. So the fact of the matter is this, very, very simply, they're different. And he says, you got to remember, you need to remember, you must remember that one time you were in darkness, but now you are the light in the Lord. We sing the song sometimes in our vacation Bible schools, this little light of mine, I'm going to let it shine. We say we hide it under a bushel. No, I'm going to let it shine. Don't let Satan puff it out. I'm going to let it shine. All around the neighborhood, I'm going to let it shine. Now, why do we sing that song? Well, the basis for that song is Matthew chapter 5, verses 14, 15, and 16. But more than that is we are lights in a troubled world. The Bible tells us this in Philippians chapter 2 and verse 15. We are the lights in a crooked and a perverse world, in a troubled world. We are lights that shine in this world, and we need to let our light shine. And that's what Paul is talking about here, as he tells them to let their light shine, but he says it a little bit different way. Middle of verse 8, walk as children of light. You need to progress as children of light. Not children of darkness where you once were, but now you are children of light. That's why they are to avoid the people that were around them or that were part of their previous life, because they don't want to partner with them anymore. They don't want to be dragged back into the life that they had before. Instead, they want to be challenged forward to their heavenly home. So he says, walk as children of light, for the fruit of light is found in all that is good, that is right, and is true. Now, I want to read that verse again for you for a moment, because we can easily skip over this verse. For the fruit of light, we don't think of light as giving away fruit. But remember the fruit of the Spirit, not the fruits, but the fruit of the Spirit. It's singular in nature. So when you get into Galatians chapter 5, verses 22 and verse 23, and you read of love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, gentleness, self-control, you read of all of those things, that's the fruit. That should be the produce that we produce as Christians. So he says that this fruit of the light is found in all that is good. What are the good things of life? Once again, if we've grown up in any religious group or we've grown up outside of religion, but yet with a standard of authority in our life, we understand the difference between good and bad. And now Paul is saying, in all that is good, in all that is right, and in all that is true. What does Paul encourage the Philippian church to think about in chapter 4, verse 8 of the book of Philippians? Think on these things. Those things that are right, that are good, that are pure, that are holy, that are of good report. He says you need to think about these. You need to meditate on those. So he's telling him here that the fruit of this is everything good. And he says, verse 10, and try to discern what's pleasing to the Lord. Try to distinguish. Use your common sense. Use your mind. Use your abilities. Verse 11, take no part in the unfruitful works of darkness, but instead expose them. For it's shameful to even speak of the things that they do in secret. He says these things that are happening in secret, we shouldn't even be talking about these. But if somebody needs exposed, okay, if these dark worlds need exposed, then you need to do that. There's a lot in our world today that we need to talk about. We need to expose that. One of the things that we're going to get into here at the end, probably on Friday, is verses 22 through the end of the chapter. Because those verses have to do with genders, have to do with a husband and wife relationship. We need to talk about that because it's important, not just for society, not just because it's important to God, but it is important for us. that we have a standard that we believe and we follow. But moving on, verse 12. For it's shameful to speak of these things that they do in secret, but when anything is exposed by light, it becomes visible. For anything that becomes visible is light. Anything that's brought out, you can see clearly. So he reminds them, awake, O sleeper, rise from the dead, and Christ will shine upon you. He's telling them that they need to look at their life and they need to look at who they are. And they need to realize, are you on the shameful side of things? Or are you on the good side of things? If things came out that were exposed, how would we feel? How would we feel about those? What would our reactions be? How would we deal in those particular areas? Well, Paul is saying to those who are preaching or teaching or living in sexual immorality and impurity and covetousness, and we've got to beware because we don't want that partnership. I'll go back to that word again. I think that word is significant. We don't want that partnership because we are no longer in the darkness, but now we are in the light. And the light is that which is going to propel us forward. But he says, awake, O sleeper, rise from the dead, and Christ will shine on you. He says, it's time that we wake up. It's time that we get ready. It's time that we understand a little bit of what's going on in our life so that we can be better people, because we don't want to slip back into the darkness. Now, he gets into this in verse 15, and I really want to take a break here, but we're not going to. We're going to continue on. And he says in verse 15, look carefully how you walk, not as unwise, but as wise. Now, if you're taking notes, a good passage here would be James chapter 1. To go back and read that. If any of you lacks wisdom, let him ask of God. He gives to all men liberally and does not withhold. But when you ask in faith, nothing doubting. For he who doubts is like a wave of the sea tossed to and fro. So if we're looking for wisdom, where do we look for wisdom? We need to be looking for wisdom from God. That's where we need to be looking for our wisdom is from God. But I want you to notice what he says. Look carefully how you walk. Now, he's talking about walking as in progressing forward. Not going backward, but going, but going forward. If we're walking forward, then we're going to be making progress to a point. What point are we going to be making progress to? Are we going to be making progress towards heaven? Are we going to be making progress towards being with God for eternity? So he says, look carefully. Now, as we look carefully how we walk, we usually look in front of us. We don't look behind us because we've already passed that. What direction are you going? He says, not as unwise, but as wise. When you walk, are you walking in wisdom? Today, as you think about that question, how have you walked in wisdom today? How have you in your life, how have you walked in the right direction? How have you walked in the right way? How have you been able to do that as a result of who you are as a child of God? I hope that when you think about walking in the right way, I hope that when you think about where you've been in life, that you realize that we need to become wiser to be able to discern. Remember our word that we use, to be able to discern the things that are happening around us. So important that we discern what's pleasing to God, all the way back in chapter 5 and verse 10. So as you think about these words today, we're getting ready to talk about what it means to walk in wisdom. And we're going to talk about a change of life. But I hope that you'll come back and be with us as we study this passage together from Ephesians chapter 5. Thank you for being with us today. And as always, we hope that you have a blessed day. And by the way, go ahead and check us out, preacherspen.org. You can find out all of our information that's there. But we hope you have a blessed day, and we look forward to talking to you soon. Be blessed.